And joining us now is Oana Popescu-Zamfir, Director at the Globalfocus Center. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hi, thank you for the invitation.
So, from what we know, there is no breakthrough in the wake of this summit, but was there supposed to be one? I mean, in the Netflix era, we're kind of thinking like, all the participants are going to come out, stand together as if they were the Avengers and say something impressive, theatrical even. Now, this didn't happen, but should we really have focused more on the details and on the fact that this is an incremental process?
Well, this is an incremental process. It doesn't necessarily make it right. I think steps have been taken, and it depends how you look at it. There's been significant progress at this summit. Support for Ukraine will continue. There's been new commitment to that. There have been new bilateral security agreements signed. We have this so-called bridge to NATO membership. There will be, from the point of view of weapons supplies and ammunition and equipment, that there will be new supplies that are very much needed in Kiev. There will also be this new facility for training Ukraine and a new venue for permanent consultation at the level of the NATO-Ukraine Council. So there has been progress. I think we can also call progress the fact that NATO has clearly stated that such countries as China, Iran, and North Korea are supporting the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So NATO has identified in a way some of its foes without necessarily calling them such to avoid open confrontation. But obviously much more could have been expected. If I'm not mistaken, Secretary General Stoltenberg was proposing initially a 100 billion euro multi-year support level for Ukraine. What we got in the end is a 1 year 40 billion euro budget. So there has been reluctance from the allies to commit to a longer term perspective. That is, in fact, I think the main challenge, the fact that what NATO is confronted with at this point, at its 75-year anniversary, is not just how to end the war in Ukraine, in its neighborhood. It is that a strategy for Ukraine needs to be a Russia strategy. This is a war of attrition, which has immediate results on the battleground. So the fact that we have switched to a war of attrition is something that shows in how Russia carries out the strikes, in how it actually aims to constantly undermine Ukraine's energy infrastructure. It has already destroyed about half of Ukraine's combined heat and power plants. So we could very well expect a new wave of refugees in Europe this coming winter because of the cold. It is undermining on a daily basis the spirit of Ukraine's fighting, as we have seen in the recent attack on the children's hospital, and it has the time. So essentially, Vladimir Putin has no interest at this point to engage in negotiations. It can very well continue doing what it's doing. It has the weapons, it has the supplies, and NATO has not really formulated a strategy as to how we're going to respond to that, because this support for Ukraine, as long as it takes, has never really been defined, and the final objective has never really been defined. So that, I think, continues to stand as the major challenge moving forward.
Now, Oana, you did mention the elephant in the room, perhaps. Now, I wonder if you see any other points of contention or points that member states do not fully agree on during that meeting, and is there any possibility for it to be resolved during the NATO summit in Washington?
I mean, most of it has to do with Ukraine. And what we're dealing with is, in a way, a new strategic posture, although NATO has acknowledged much of the changing environment in global affairs. And like I said, the fact that it has named China, Iran, and North Korea is in itself a step forward, because it says that NATO understands that the threat does not just come from immediately outside its borders. It actually also comes from the Asia Pacific. It's a conflict that's brewing on a much more global level. And there have been steps taken. We have the new plans for our region that need implementation and development. So, like I said, and you actually called it an incremental process, and that's what we're going through. The question is, are we doing this instead of the overhaul that might be necessary, and a quicker response strategy that should be developed, or are we doing it because we think this is really going to take us to victory, or recovering the advantage at global level? I think that's where the tension is. Some of the allies would like to see NATO move faster, be way more resolute. If we have seen the reality for what it is, then let's do something about it, and let's do it today. And others are afraid that by moving too fast, it could break things, and then it could provoke Russia's response. It could provoke escalation. China has also responded quite angrily to being singled out. So I think that's the main tension. I don't really see specific points of contention. Obviously, I mean, there are always, when it comes to Ukraine, there are always discussions as to what kind of weapons should be delivered. But we see that increasingly there are more and more lethal weapons, that restrictions on what Ukraine is allowed to do with them is gradually being lifted, although the US has maintained its restriction when it comes to using US lethal weapons only against targets near the border, within Russia, I mean, that are preparing attacks on Ukraine. Of course, this might change. We could see this gradually extend to a more aggressive posture, let's say. But for now, this is part of that incremental process.
So it would appear that the leaders gathered at the summit want to make an omelette without breaking any eggs. I'm not sure if it's a good recipe. Nevertheless, there is still this anti-escalation mentality.
Them, just here and there.
So we're going to be going back to this topic today, because this is, as we've already indicated, our main story. For the time being, Oana Popescu-Zamfir was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you so much.